Hi, hello everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are joining me. Um, Thanks for joining to the first content webinar of 2023, Data Excellence at Your Service. In this webinar, I will present the ways content operations is working through data excellence to improve metadata on different levels as part of our initiative, and how these changes are improving your everyday routine as well as your patrons' experience. On the agenda, we will start with presenting the content challenge and what inspired the initiative of the data excellence. We will continue with principles of managing metadata. I will then proceed to present the data excellence initiative with the different tracks: quality, currency, and discoverability. We will finish today's webinar with a few things to look forward to in 2023. We will start with the content challenge, or what makes content so hard to handle. Well, the content challenge in the knowledge bases and in CDI is that there's just so much content. For example, we can look at Alma statistics to understand the vastness of content for Ex Libris users. There are over 2,600 collections with more than 1,000 portfolios. So every file of updates or deletions or edits contains a lot of data to go over and review. This data is compared to previous updates. Even though it is an automated process, errors and discrepancies might raise flags and pause the automation process. Alma CZ also hosts 103 collections with over 500 activations, totaling in 441,407 activations in institutions across the world. Next to these highly activated collections, there are also over 8,400 collections with less than 10 activations, meaning that Alma Community Zone also represents content that is very specific and serves smaller communities. It can be regional content or non-English content that is very valued by these users, but in total has very little impact on the entire community. There are also over 4,050 interfaces, meaning providers that host their content on different platforms. So they also maintain a variety of linking information. For example, Elsevier has Clinical Key, Science Direct, medical textbook platforms, and more different platforms with different linking information to host different types of content. All this content is available in over 150 languages. So the challenge is also in representing a variety of diacritic marks that sometimes have different meanings in different languages. If we take a look at CDI, we can see a large variety of material types represented there, as we currently have over 5.14 billion records. The majority is of journal articles, followed by books and eBook records, patents, conference proceedings, book chapters, data sets, and video recordings, meaning there is a great volume of metadata to manage with many variants to maintain. The difference in content types also changes the way in which we receive the metadata. It affects the way the file format we receive it in, MARC, XML, KBART. It affects the frequency of updates. Material type also affects the identifiers. So the content types pave the way to manage the metadata and how we can make the most out of what we receive from the providers. The policy which we choose to manage the metadata results in the way the content is represented in different Ex Libris services that libraries have, and impact the internal workflows of librarians and eventually what end users see and how they retrieve the content they are looking for. Which leads us to the challenge of managing metadata. The content types determine the ways in which we process and ingest the metadata. For all content types, management of the metadata is done by addressing the quality, currency, and discoverability, meaning the metadata needs to be as rich as possible. It needs to be updated with any additions, deletions, or edits, and it needs to be discoverable with normalized fields and accurate linking information. The effect of these three factors for the end user are what makes the difference if they find what they need or not. It affects the linking information and if they can reach the granular then title level and how many clicks it takes them to get there. It affects the locations in which they can find the items they are looking for. If they can find the volumes of one title and in how many languages. If they can find the item with all its available material types. And if they can easily locate the different editions that the item was published, and if they can find the most relevant or the latest edition. As librarians and as end users, you would expect to see the information reflected accurately in the metadata. One bibliographic record to display all relevant links, locations, material types and volumes, separate records for languages and editions. Properly managing metadata sparked many discussions, internal between different Ex Libris teams, and external with user groups, which has resulted in the Data Excellence Initiative. What makes data excellent? The Data Excellence Initiative has three main tracks for improving data across Ex Libris knowledge bases and Discovery Index. The first track, quicker updates, meaning improving monitoring of how up-to-date the collections are and increase the update frequency of metadata in both knowledge bases and CDI. The second track, better quality, which can be measured by evaluating the bibliographic record enrichment level based on the marked fields that are populated. And the third track is to improve discoverability, which focused on both linking accuracy as well as decrease rights processing times in CDI, and more. Beginning with the first track, quicker updates, which is the first track for data excellence. Being up to date meant, first of all, to make updates from providers visible as quickly as possible in the knowledge bases. This was the initial design in the provider zone, and now we are taking it to the next level in the direct ingest for Alma. Direct ingest, direct impact. So once providers notify us on changes, this will be reflected in the library's environment as soon as possible. Speed of updates was what led us down this path. And thus your patrons will have better and more accurate visibility of your holdings. This is the way we're looking to make the most efficiently to work with the provider's updates. It required cleaning up the current collections, checking which collections were not automated for different reasons, and clearing up duplicate collections, and that also improved the status of the knowledge bases. Currently, we have direct ingest for JSTOR collections and Cambridge collections, the sum of over 4 million portfolios in more than 400 active collections. This is data excellence at your service, taking highly activated and popular providers and moving them for direct ingest. These collections have 1,440 activations, meaning every update of new content, deletions, or edits will impact a large number of institutions. Next to come for direct ingest. Having direct ingest will significantly reduce the update cycle, meaning that instead of taking sometimes up to 3 weeks to have the updates from the providers reflected for customers, the updates from the providers will be seen in Alma within a day or two. The next providers we plan to move to direct ingest are eBook Central, De Gruyter, and Elsevier. This will affect almost 9 million portfolios in 2,474 collections that are activated more than 50,500 times across the world. By the end of 2023, we are planning to move between 60 to 70% of all the portfolios to direct ingest, making quicker updates available for a lot more content. The move to direct ingest also had other implications. First of all, we're looking into our automated processes and review how currently the collections are being automated. Some collections should not be automated as they do not receive any updates. So this bears on the mapping of the collections and how they are expected to be handled. Since moving to direct ingest reduces our response time because we no longer have a buffer time to respond to errors, we're improving the ingestion process and make sure the right checkups take place. For instance, if there's an archival collection that could not be updated, if we receive an updated file for this collection, this raises a flag. We contact the provider and we pause the automation before updating the collection automatically. We also go over the current collections to clean up any redundant duplications, and this helps us in making sure that the right collections will be monitored and kept up to date. For better interface management, we address the issue of collections that belong to the providers but are being maintained by a consortium or another provider. For example, if there are collections that come from a consortium for Taylor and Francis content, it will require a different feed than Taylor and Francis's feed because the updates can have different parameters, different timings, different file structure, and so on. Also, for the move to direct ingest, we found out that some collections are duplicates and can be better represented in the knowledge bases. The duplicates were removed, thus making the community zone a better representation of what we get from providers. Another part of keeping up to date is internal actions to closely monitor the collection's currency, meaning how current are the collections, when was the last update, what should be the update frequency, and so on. Having this information in one aggregated report help us monitor collections that are currently automated, but for some reason are not being updated properly. It can also raise a flag for update frequency. Suppose a collection that should be updated weekly has not been updated in the last month. Through our advanced reporting options, we can see when was the last time a file was fetched from the server, if there was new content to add, edit, or delete, or maybe the file did not have anything new in comparison to the current status. Therefore, it wasn't updated. Another proactive monitoring procedure is case analysis. We monitor content cases closely and evaluate any trends that may indicate a collection is not being properly updated. The second track for data excellence is achieving better quality. Better quality improves every aspect of managing content. There are two approaches to improve the quality of metadata. Either downstream, after we receive the files from the provider, we can actively look for ways to improve the metadata. Another way is to improve the metadata at the origin, where it is created with the providers. Data excellence at your service for this track. We took different measures to improve and upgrade the metadata. The first, enrichment of highly activated eBook collections. I will explain more in the next slide. After targeting specific eBook collections, we managed to improve their quality score from 3.76 to over 8, average of the brief level enrichment. This is an ongoing project, and we're continuing in selecting collections, improving them based on low scores and number of activations, and other parameters, such as number of affected portfolios. Another ongoing part of the Data Excellence Track 2 is reaching out to providers. Provider relations team is growing in capacity and changing their workflows to accommodate providers' capabilities. Although we have established relationships with major providers, we have many smaller providers to include in our different services. These providers have different business models that sometimes cannot be easily accommodated within our current workflows. For example, having different tailor-made collections for each of their customer makes it difficult for us to maintain a regular feed for updates, additions, and deletions. Also, some of the smaller providers are not accustomed to work with standardized metadata. So it takes some effort to introduce these standards and inform the provider about present their content best in our services. A one-time effort was utilizing alternative sources to enrich the metadata, such as Library of Congress print records. This took place in 2022. Using Library of Congress print records metadata, we enriched up to 1 million electronic records. So going back to the enriched eBook collections, Like I showed, like I showed in the previous slide, the quality score grew significantly from an average of 3.76, which means very poor quality that affected the use, the linking, matching, and more. After the enrichment, the average quality of the collection is higher than 8, so it does make a difference. This means that sometimes details such as subjects, authors, imprint, and more were added, making the record much more discoverable, much more accurate. Since we are dealing with so much content, we cannot address all brief level items. So the key here is to prioritize. Since brief records for ebooks are more significant for retrieval, we chose a list of ebook collections that are highly activated, meaning we singled out collections that have a high number of activations. Some of the records in these collections were good enough, but others were very brief. So these were the ones we targeted. We currently reached over 67,000 records, which is a drop in the sea of content. But when you think about the fact that these are highly activated collections, then it makes sense to allocate resources to improve specifically these collections. This is a short list as an example of the collections we enriched. eBook Central, Elsevier Science Direct books, Walter de Gruyter books, novel book collections, DOAB, Open, NCBI Bookshelf, Intech Books Free. This affects over 7,800 customers that use these collections. Although this means selectively targeting specific ebook collections, this is the most impactful way to improve the quality of the metadata. So the provider feed is also an important source to handle. It actually is one of the most important parts of managing metadata across the different Ex Libris services. We are dependent in the feed from the providers, not only to keep the updates working properly and reflected for end users, but also in determining how these will look in the product and what products the content is suitable for. If the provider can send us KBARTs with identifiers, unique linking information, titles, authors, and so on, we can use it in the knowledge bases, making pretty decent collections. Sometimes the metadata file does not have unique identifiers. Then we have a list of titles, let's say called proceedings, or something very generic. We can add it to the knowledge base, but then searching for content from that list will not provide useful results. It would be a list of titles called the same way, with sometimes different portfolios, sometimes not. And usually we need to reconsider how we use these title lists. Sometimes this is best displayed in CDI, so that all available data from the provider feed can be used and displayed somehow and differentiate between the different records. Also, the material type plays an important role here of what is the best way to display the level of metadata we can get from the provider. If it's an abstract and indexing database, it should only go to CDI. It cannot be an Alma. Articles, book chapters, CDI as well. So the material type in the feed, the file types the provider sends, it all impacts if the content is manageable in the KBs or CDI. And if the metadata does not match the minimum standard, the result is sometimes subpar representations in the knowledge bases and CDI. As I mentioned, Data Excellence Initiative is all about finding ways to improve the metadata. So either we can make the change with the provider, or we look into ways of improving it downstream. But do keep in mind that since there is a lot of content, we obviously will focus our efforts on the most impact. And last, maintaining the feed is also a critical aspect. By using our improved internal monitoring tools, I presented in Data Excellence Track 1, we can closely follow up on additions, deletions, and edits done for the different collections. We're also looking into ways of automating processes and setting up alerts to prevent any errors. And we find ourselves often being pulled in different directions, updating and adding content as soon as we get feeds, but on the other hand, waiting until we can get suitable and good enough metadata. As we constantly try to find the right balance between the two, it's not always possible So you end up either waiting for new content to show up in your knowledge base and discovery, or wait for better metadata to improve your experience. Although Data Excellence Initiative is aiming to enhance both the quality and currency of the content, it's not always clear what is the best way to address this challenge, and we received feedback on both possibilities. Challenge presents two different modes of action. Would be interesting to surface this dilemma with the audience, webinar attendees. What do you think is the best way to handle this conflict? I'm going to put in the chat a short survey. Just a second. Which I will be happy if you can fill it out. I know this survey is very short, but it just tries to test your general conduct or your general preference. What do you think is the best way to handle this conflict? Should we have a thin bibliographic record as soon as possible, or waiting until there's a good enough bibliographic record? This question, if I may, I would prefer to put it for now without any context of material needed for classes or exams. Just what would you prefer for a collection of books or journals your institution purchased, and you only find a collection with brief level records to activate? Would you prefer to wait or activate as it is? I've put the time period of waiting for 2 weeks, just for reference, but I'm sure your answer would vary if the time frame would have been 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, and so on. But for now, let's think about 2 weeks and what would you prefer to do? You may also add your input in the other section. So moving to the last track of data excellence, which spans around improved discoverability. First aspect of discoverability is the linking of the content. The complexity of linking is to take the user to the best possible link as directly as possible while taking institutional rights and setup into account. There is no one solution that fits all. Some items are available from several platforms, and the appropriate rights need to be calculated to the right copy. Some items are unique to one platform, and there's only one appropriate copy. And of course, as discussed in track 2 of data excellence, some metadata does not have identifiers, which makes it difficult to connect the right link to the right copy. Another part of discoverability is the number of clicks a user needs to make in order to reach the full text. These are the two aspects of discoverability in the linking part of data excellence. Is data excellence at your service for linking? First of all, linking methods that suit the collection. One part is changing collections from link resolver when there are no identifiers to link in record type of linking. Link resolver is great for collections with good identifiers, content that is available on several platforms, and has a reliable title list. But link in record is better for collections with no identifiers and unique content, such as newspapers collection or primary sources. To improve the linking, we use unique identifiers from the provider in collections that use link resolver. That way, we're using the provider ID when it is available. The provider ID is given for specific documents in the metadata for the link resolver to increase the accuracy of the linking so that the provider IDs are part of the open URL sent from CDI to the link resolver. Another way of improving discoverability is by reducing the number of clicks to reach the full text. This is quick links. By using quick links, your users now have access directly to the full text from CDI with just one click. This is available for 33 leading providers, and we keep adding more and more providers to this list. You can also set your preferences for the links order for link and record collections, as well as quick links. One of our main focus areas was to keep the linking solutions flexible to better suit the content. For example, for abstract and indexing, or mixed material with or without identifiers, we offer the hybrid linking, which can solve linking issues for collections that do not have the same level of metadata. For more information, you're welcome to watch the links webinar given in April 2022. I added the link here in the presentation to the recorded webinar. Another part of discoverability in data excellence is the rights processing time reduction. Once you've activated the relevant resource in Alma, it used to take even a week before your patrons could see the items in Primo. But today, Primo processes the newly given rights, and then it is displayed in CDI within the average 30 hours. So this is actually a major technical development. Now the average time is 30 hours to process the rights file from Alma to CDI. And the plan is to reduce it even more than that and have the average for below 30 hours as low as 24 hours. Parts of data excellence to improve discoverability is to normalize subject headings, making better matches for content to the right subjects. Normalizing subject headings will impact records that have variations of subject headings, so the retrieval will be more accurate. Another normalization is to add ORCID author information to the index. ORCID, as a freely available resource providing unique IDs for authors, can be very helpful in distinguishing the different authors based on publications. Having such a resource in CDI will help matching the published works to the relevant authors, so that search and retrieval will be more accurate. Adding secondary resource types, such as article reviews and retractions, will be a great help to evaluate the results from searches, because even retracted content has been published in peer-reviewed titles. So making the indication of which articles have been retracted gives important insight on usability and validity of the content. And last, improving the language consistency and publication date is also a project we have allocated resources to, because this has major impact on the discoverability of the content. Having various feeds from many resources tend to bring in consistencies, and addressing the language and date variables and choosing one date, one language, will improve the retrieval and will increase trust and reliability of results. So what's next for data excellence? We will keep the ongoing efforts to improve the quality, currency, and discoverability of the metadata. As I mentioned, several of the actions are an ongoing effort and will keep improving according to technical capabilities across Ex Libris products and providers' cooperation. As operational efficiency is a top priority, we will keep looking for ways to improve updates and make them happen faster and more accurate. Also, the content support team is increasing in capacity, and thanks to Project Flash, we can now divert our attention to recent cases and reduce the backlog. Our focused attention at the moment is to improve your experience with our analysts, and we're working hard to reduce content-related cases. We also keep improving our communication and collaboration with customers and providers, looking at ways to improve our transparency with webinars and meetings with regional user groups and providers. One of the ways to improve our outreach is the new content mailing list. Please join the list for any content-related messaging. I would appreciate it if you could send any content-related question in this list. It's a very lively list of very interesting posts. And that would make it easier for the community and for the content operations team to follow up on any content-related topic. So, to summarize data excellence at your service, this is an ongoing project which branches across many aspects of managing metadata. One of its strengths is in prioritizing and best way to make an impact on library processes and user experience while improving Ex Libris workflows and development. Each track can be reviewed by itself, but eventually They're all interconnected by the motivation to improve the metadata we are handling. It can be by choosing the appropriate venue in which it is displayed, finding suitable enrichment sources, monitoring and following up on our internal processes, reducing time for rights processing or showing updates. Now let's check the survey results. Wow, we got 92 responses, and they split about half and half, just as the same as the earlier session has. So 46% preferred to activate as soon as possible, regardless of bib record quality. 44% would prefer to wait for 2 weeks to get better bib records before activating. And then we have all these other comments. ASAP for journals, 2 weeks for books. So it's material type dependent. That's interesting. Activate as soon as possible, but update after 2 weeks. Update as soon as possible, overlay with better metadata when available. So no time frame on that. Have note that the records are going to be updated. Okay, so that means improving our transparency and our future working plans for this specific collection. If you can update in 2 weeks, go ahead with low quality. Activate as soon as possible, but I hope the bibliographic description of the collection includes info that it is in the process of build. So again, with the transparency, I see that this is something that's very important for people just to know where you're standing. It depends on whether there are bibliographic records available from another source. We wouldn't, you wouldn't activate a CZ collection with substandard bibs if we could load higher quality local ones. However, if it's the only way to provide discovery, then we would take the brief bibs rather than nothing, I presume. Why only 2 options? Only 2 options because it is an endless world of options, because it could be, it could have been that within 2 weeks we get only 50% of the collection enrichment or 20% of the collection enrichment. It could take a month, it could take a year. So this is just to get the general idea of what your peers would prefer in handling electronic ebook and journal collections. But these are very interesting responses. I can say that they're very similar to the responses we had in the earlier sessions. It also split half and half. So yeah, it is a challenge for us as well to make the right decision, the appropriate decision. And it does often depend on what we can achieve from the provider and what can we enrich by ourselves. So before we end this webinar, yeah, a bit early, but I'm sure you wouldn't mind. We did cover lots of ground. Would like to let you know about a webinar coming up on April 27th on a very important topic, diversity and inclusion by design, how technology can ensure a better world. Sounds very interesting. I highly recommend registering. And the user group events that we are looking forward in 2023, Aluna in May and Igloo in September. And the slides will be available with the registration and information links. And that's all.
Okay, tomorrow we do have quite a few questions that have come in. Let me get to them. And everybody, I have thrown some links in the chat. I'll throw a Igloo and a Luna link out there as well. And I'll make a plug for Igloo. They do have the call for proposals out for sessions that are going to be in Leuven, Belgium. That's for the next month. It runs through April 23rd. And then in terms of plugging Aluna, I know that early bird registration is open right now, and as is the program. So when you see that link, you can take a look at the program. Okay, now for the questions. Will this be recorded? Yes. Next question is, please consider using more directly the high quality records from Canopy and films on demand streaming video vendors. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, we're currently in discussions with Overdrive to see how we can have their content in. Unfortunately, Canopy is also on their roadmap of making their content available for automatic harvesting, because at the moment there is no sustainable way for us to adequately add their title list with and good enough bibliographic records. So we don't want to put a lot of subpar or substandard collections that eventually will not be usable. So we are in discussions with them. We have contact people there who are very keen on cooperating, but currently only for Overdrive. I hope that they will finish their development for Canopy sometime in the near future, and we can cooperate regarding Canopy as well.
Next question. Somebody asked a question early on in the presentation about what about 360?
Yeah, well, we have three knowledge bases: SFX, 360, and Alma. And since they overlap greatly, then just taking the statistics for Alma is it just generally speaks also for SFX and 360. They work differently. That updates in 360 are seen automatically. So, the gap between what we got from providers and what was seen in your interface didn't mean much for 360 customers, but it does mean a lot for Alma. That's why I presented it for Alma.
Okay, the next question is the quality score on a scale of 10?
Yes, that's a very good point. It's from a scale of 1 to 10, and it's a brief level scale. That the 1 is the briefest and the 10 is most enriched. And currently we're striving to get above 8, because we've put it for ourselves as the minimum RAF of making the record usable and acceptable.
Okay. Another question is, thank you for all this work to improve the metadata quality. I have noticed the improvements in eBook Central. More of a comment than a question.
Wow, great, thanks.
Okay. Let me see. Will CDI be incorporating linked data?
Well, we're working on it, and it does make a lot of sense, but because there is such a large variety of content types, then everything, things just act a little differently, and we have to make the linked data functionality work the same across all content types. So it will take some development. It is in different discussion groups that work internally, cross products in Ex Libris. So we have people from different products sitting together talking about what linked data means, how we want it to behave, what do we expect, what we think the customers expect, and how to best utilize linked data so we can use it as much as we can without degrading the current functionalities and services.
Okay, next question is, could you say more about quality control and how you are taking into consideration what content is already in use activated by institutions when decisions are set to be deleted as duplicates? Some of these streamlining efforts have resulted in extraordinarily time-consuming processes, time-consuming problems to fix.
Well, if we had two collections with the same name and one was updated, let's say a year ago, and the other one was updated, last month, we pulled the title list. We made sure which one of the collections was was more had the best representation of the title list we received from the provider. You know, sometimes it meant that we were getting updates that got to the wrong collection, or you know, changed the title in a way that didn't adhere with the provider's content, whatever he offered within this collection. So basically, it was the date of the last update, how much it complies with the provider's title lists. If you have any specific cases or examples for that, I'd appreciate it if you could just reach out and send them to me in an email so I can make sure that we have properly checked and you know, and get some lessons learned for the future if we deleted by mistake something that shouldn't have been deleted.
Okay, we have 2 more questions that are in. If anybody else has any questions, go ahead and submit them through the Q&A. First question is direct ingest. Do the providers maintain their own bib records in Alma? So if a resource has 3 providers, do we end up with 3 separate bib records? If we merge them, will it affect the direct ingest process?
Well, that's a good question. I'll have to check that, and I'll get back to you. I don't want to say anything that I'm not 100%
If
sure of.
the person that asked that question can go ahead and drop Tamar a note through the email address that's posted, that would be fantastic. The next question is, the bib enhancements are great. Is it possible to ensure format-specific ISBNs or the first ISBNs in the bib? We noticed a change to ordering recently. For example, eBook orders attaching to print bibs. The matching is done on the first ISBN in the incoming record. Again, the enhancements are great.
Well, thanks. Okay, that's a good point. I'll take it back to the team and we'll see how we can prioritize the format-specific ISBN rather than the first ISBN that pops up.
Okay, Tamar, I don't have any other questions. So if you want to go ahead and make some concluding remarks, that would be great.
Great. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate your attending, and looking forward to meeting at least some of you in Eluna, and we'll have another session there on data excellence. We'll probably have a lot more to update about direct ingest. We'll probably have, I think, around 7 or 8 million portfolios already in direct ingest, and yeah, I really appreciate you giving up your time and participating, listening, and asking questions.